The year was 1899. At the University of Pennsylvania, the Free Museum of Science and Art was about to celebrate its 12th anniversary by taking up residence in its new building as the University Museum of Archaeology and Anthropology. One of the first exhibitions to appear would be a splendid ethnological collection brought back by three young gentlemen adventurers from their ongoing expeditions to the island of Borneo. William Henry Furness III, Hiram Milliken Hiller, and Alfred Craven Harrison Jr. were enthusiastic amateur ethnologists who strove to document the culture of the disappearing and misunderstood people of Borneo's interior, collectively known as the Dayaks. Their collection would show that the so-called wild men of Borneo were not isolated Stone Age savages as was widely believed, but were instead complex tribes on the fringe of the great civilizations of Asia. Visitors to the museum would delight in seeing all the strange and yet sometimes familiar ways and means of Dayak life. Then around 1914, the exhibit would be taken down and placed in storage, for 75 years remaining hidden from view, until now. A meeting between museum director Robert Dyson Jr. and Oceanian section curator William Davenport would lead to the decision to allow the Borneo collection to once more catch the public's imagination. Because it would be the first major exhibition of the museum's second century, and because the collectors were closely associated with its opening, Doctors Dyson and Davenport and exhibit designer John Murray wanted something especially enlightening and exciting, something visually and texturally different that would connect visitors to the museum's history and reinforce it not only as a museum of archaeology and antiquities, but of ethnological collections as well. And this was the result. You enter the gallery and you enter a time of 100 years past. The collection stands as it would have in the late 19th century, in large Edwardian-style cases, crowded and rich with treasure. Stenciled walls and period wainscoting, the abundant integration of browns and greens, like being in the rainforest itself, majestic, gloomy, lacking only the tropical mist. With so many fantastic objects in ready sight, it's almost a challenge not to simply wander and explore, but you turn to your left for an eerie first glimpse of the Dayaks. You see a video monitor with a selection of original hand-colored lantern slides. An orientation panel introduces you to this largest island of insular Southeast Asia. A map of Borneo, its major geography and relief. A panel on the Dayaks, their cultural groupings, settlements, and a map showing their territory. A discussion of the expeditions and the routes taken by the collectors. And now you come face to face with those young adventurers who traveled to Borneo so long ago, and a subtle personal bond is immediately created between you. On your right you can see some of their letters, drawings, and odd acquisitions. Beyond this case of curiosities lies the lifeblood of Dayak existence. to lead you from macro view to micro view, and to bring you in close to the Dayaks' way of living relative to your own. To the left, Dayak exports. The Europeans bought rattan, resins, rubber, camphor. To that list, the Chinese added edible birds' nests and exotic medicines. Seeing products in packaged form, you suddenly realize this trade must be going on even today. As for the commodities the Dayaks received in return, they included both utilitarian goods and valuable objects. As the terminus of a pattern of overseas trade more than 1,000 years old, your sense of the Dayaks' simplicity is now coupled with that of their sophistication. The cases that loom so large down the center of the gallery beckon, each with 4 sides seemingly filled to capacity, and yet the effect isn't overpowering. As you examine the fabrics woven from varieties of banana, hemp, jute, pineapple, and cotton, you discover the intimate spiritual connections of certain designs. You learn of the extremely difficult dyeing technique known as ikat, whose fascinating intricacy is rivaled only by the artistry of the beadwork lying in the short adjacent case. And the fine and delicate clothing and ornaments in the next large case. Here especially, as words and photos provide context and explanation, the surrounding light source is balanced to reflect the artifact's beauty and preserve their fragile integrity. Returning to follow the exhibit's path, you stand before the longhouse. Man is carnal and animal, and yet deeply spiritual. The text here describes the Dayak belief that a measure of new vital force was incorporated when such an article would be brought into the longhouse, enhancing the well-being of all. It may make you wonder on the duality of our nature, the struggle to survive and to achieve humanity. You turn before the last large case in the center of the gallery. Fighting. Spears and swords. Shields with human hair. Fighting caps of fiber or animal skin, trimmed with beadwork, shells, and animal teeth. Fighting jackets with skins of cloud leopard and sun bear, covered with beads, shells, and the black and white tail feathers of the sacred rhinoceros hornbill. As the Dayaks brandished their tools of war, so did they proclaim their ways of peace. Certain groups took part in rituals for healing, reconciliation, protecting crops, and greeting strangers. To this day, some are still performed. You take a last look at these people from an island once far from our reach. We have given you a well-formed and thoughtful picture of their past, a society and culture fleshed out and alive, an exhibit from 100 years ago, reborn to educate a new generation.